Hey everybody, and welcome to an enlightening wild ride with Steve-O. Anybody who is a regular listener of this podcast knows how big of a deal this episode is. It is the author of the books that I rave about constantly called Conversations with God. And I call Neale Donald Walsch my life coach because from his books I have developed my understanding of life and the universe. I'm telling you, this is my favorite guest. I was dying to get him. So, get ready and let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, my life coach, Neale Donald Walsch. I have spoken so often about how much your books, Conversation with God, have helped me. The most traumatic thing that ever I went through, my mom suffered an aneurysm and she survived it, but she came out heinously physically and mentally disabled, and she had bed sores. I developed a real anger towards God, and by changing my perspective to that, all of a sudden, God didn't allow that to happen to my mom. There's no separation there. That was God. God, my mom is God, and so that helped a lot. It really, really did. It's still, I would echo what you said. I don't understand it. I don't like it, but I think I view it more as natural law of cause and effect. Like if my mom had alcoholism. She smoked for many, many years, and I can understand that
consequences.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in the existence of the human soul?
Yes.
Do you believe in the existence of this entity or this essence that we call God?
Yes.
Steve, what in your awareness is the relationship between the soul and God?
They are one and the same. That God in the absolute is pure love. It's one thing, but being only one thing, it cannot have experience. So God in the absolute divides itself into many different things, which creates the realm of the relative. So, but all things are God.
So let me ask you a question. Can God, as you understand God to be victimized in any way? That is, can anything happen to God that God does not want to have happen?
No.
If the soul is one with God, can anything happen to the soul that the soul does not want to have happen? Can the soul be victimized in any way?
No.
Then why would your mother's soul choose to experience what she experienced the last 5 years of her life?
That's a tough one. I don't know.
No, but if you thought you knew, what would your answer be?
If I thought I knew, it feels like a stretch, but the journey that I went on from being so traumatized by everything that happened, and then the shift in the perspective, and I don't know. There's something. There's something about my journey in working through that and overcoming it that I could see has value.
Steve, do you think at the soul level your mother might have known that? That her situation and the condition in which she found herself would have an impact and an effect on you that would change your life for the better?
I could.
I want you to consider the possibility then that your mother at the level of soul was not unaware or ignorant of the fact that I've just described, and that her last 5 years and what she went through at a physical level was her final act of love for you.
Yeah, I'll take it. It's a tough one, but I'll take it.
Does it have anything to do with like soul contracts?
Precisely.
I mean, that's her acting out her contract.
Knowing that what I'm going to move through now will bring enormous benefit ultimately to my son, and will open him to an awareness of so many different things that he would not have been open to if he hadn't been visited by that kind of emotionally traumatic experience in life.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of an emotional traumatic experience could really open my son to an awareness that I already hold at a spiritual level? See, I think that your mom graduated from her own misbehaviors at a spiritual level. Her soul knows, that is not really the way to go. Not the way to make the best use of this physical life. I wonder how I could say that to my son, that he would really get it. Because if I just said it verbally, don't do what I did, and so forth, he would probably nod, yeah, okay, Mom, and then blow it off. But what if I found some way? In fact, what if we agreed ahead of time, soul contract, that we would have this opportunity for me to send that message to him in a way that would be so searingly present he couldn't possibly ignore it. So I'm going to suggest that when I was told by God in my conversations there's no such thing as a coincidence, that nothing happens without a understanding reason on the part of all the, if I could put it this way, all the players in the game, all the actors in the scene, then you could almost, at some level, release any lingering sadness you have about what your mom went through and see it as her act of courage, bravery, and her final act of love for you. And by the way, if your mom was sitting between us right now, she'd be saying, Neale, you nailed it.
Yeah, she'd probably say something to the effect of like, that's what it took to get through his
thick skull,
fat, thick, stupid head. Or something. She was always...
Me too, buddy.
Yeah.
Shake hands on that. Me too.
Right.
It took me 55 years of my life to get through my thick skull. What was really going on here? Who I really am? What the purpose of this whole thing is? I mean, I blew off half a century of my life, not knowing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that, and I think you can make great progress to figuring out who you are and what it's all about, and then you can just lose it. It's glimpses that we see it in, and then those glimpses just fade into. I think I do that a lot. Yeah. I think I kind of get to it, and I feel like really plugged in, and then I lose it. I do want to ask about soul contracts. Now, not from conversations with God, but from other sources. I've seen about how the soul contract, it's a blueprint for life, and kind of choosing what experiences we want to have in our body in order to work something out, have some experience, and evolve in a certain way. And in putting together this soul contract, this blueprint for a life, at that point, we're not in a body. We're so I suppose in between lives. We're a spiritual entity, and as that spiritual entity, I've heard that we will choose our parents. We'll choose our parents. We will make an outline for events that are predetermined, which are going to shape the experience that we're going to have in our life. And then when the agreement is made, part of the agreement is that as we enter the body, as we incarnate as a human, that we forget the whole deal. And then we're kind of, because if we knew the deal, it would invalidate the experience. But my question is, how does the idea of a blueprint, of a life contract with things predetermined built into it,
how does that reconcile with free will?
How does that, how does that jive with free will?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask this question so badly for the longest time. And I might add that I believe strongly if there is a blueprint for my life, then it involved figuring out the difference between wiping my butt and washing my butt, because it is a big difference. Are you still using dry toilet paper to just smear poop all over your butthole? I mean, come on, you're out of your mind. You've got to get hip to the butt washing program from HelloTushy.com. This is revolutionary. It has changed my life, man. I love blasting my butthole with a refreshing stream of water from my bidet from Hello Tushy. I'm telling you, man, it cuts down on your use of toilet paper by 80%. And as such, the thing pays for itself in no time. It also doesn't require any special extra plumbing or any special electricity. You just attach it to your toilet and you're good to go. Plus, if you go to hellotushy.com/Stevo, then you get 10% off your first order. I've raved about this company since the beginning of this podcast, and I have always said they are my favorite sponsor of this podcast. It is hellotushy.com/Stevo, and use the promo code Stevo for 10% off your first order. Now, let's get back to it.
You said a number of things there that I wanted to interrupt you with or on when you said them, but I wanted to give you the chance to make your mistake. I mean, to go on. I meant to go on with your statement.
I love it.
First of all, knowing that you made some comment of knowing ahead of time what's going to happen, you said that one of the last things you said so we have to forget. We have to agree to enter into temporary amnesia. Otherwise, if we knew ahead of time what was going to happen, it would invalidate the whole experience. Steve-O, having appeared in probably 36 or 39 separate stage productions, on stage as an actor, I mean. I've also directed many shows, but I've had a rich background in live theater. I can tell you that isn't true. I've done dramatic roles in which, of course, I knew ahead of time what was going to happen in the next moment, in the next scene, because we rehearsed it for 3 weeks, and I knew exactly what the next scene was going to be, what the lines were going to be. That didn't stop me from feeling the emotions and feeling them deeply, as if it was happening to me for the first time. And all and not that I am a great actor, but all really great actors would tell you that that's been exactly their experience. They cry real tears, not make-believe tears, when they move through a particular scene that they've done for 5 years on Broadway. But they still have the emotional response, because the mind cannot stop itself, if it's truly engaged in the moment, from responding in the way that love would call forth, even if they know that what's going on is play acting, in a sense. You know, it's you wouldn't know what it cost me to have those people out there doing that.
At the right time.
Well, yeah, I've paid them a lot of money to interrupt.
Let me tell them this.
So I'm not altogether convinced that knowing ahead of time would stop us or prohibit us from having an emotional response, a genuine one. I've encountered moments in stage plays in which I've appeared where I knew what was coming, and even knowing what was coming triggered the emotional response that what occurred in the play was designed to trigger. So that's one thing I just wanted to say, is that I'm not sure that we have to not know in order to have a genuine emotional response and have the experience that we came here to experience. But now, let me go back to something before that you said that I also am not sure that I totally agree with. I don't think that there's a blueprint. I don't think that we have a contract that says, you know, on a certain day at a certain time, you're going to sit down with a man named Steve-O and have a conversation in which you make him terribly wrong for 3.5 minutes. And he laughs at it. I don't think that this experience was agreed upon by us, nor do I think the major events of my life were agreed upon in terms of the events themselves. So my understanding, because I asked God the same question. Wait a minute, how can there be a contract? How can there be an agreement and also be free will? They seem to be juxtaposed. So God said, good question. The understanding that I have, Steve-O, is that events are not planned ahead of time. We don't have predestination and free will are mutually exclusive. Right. But what the souls do agree with is to create certain emotionally filled opportunities. But how that will play out in terms of a specific event is not designed ahead of time. So to use the present example of your mother's last 5 years of her life as an example, she might have in fact, I don't think she might have, I think there's no question that she made an agreement with your soul. You guys made an agreement. How about if I provide you with an opportunity emotionally to grapple with deep personal sadness, maybe even at some level emotional injury, such that it would transform and change your life and bring you to a new understanding that you are going to go into your next lifetime in order to have. And you could have had that contract, say, okay, I'll sign here, let's do that. So we agree on the emotional content that we're going to seek to create for each other, but we don't agree on, it's going to happen on the 14th of July at 2:30 in the afternoon, and I'm going to be having bed sores for 5 years, right. And this is how it's going to look, because that would make free will impossible. Right. So my understanding is that we agree on the emotional content, but we don't. We're like players in an orchestra, Steve-O. The analogy that God gave me was, there's a 67-piece orchestra, and by the way, I've conducted orchestras, so I know all about what this feels like. They're all playing Mozart. but one guy's playing a flute, one lady's playing a violin, one fellow's playing the timpani, and one man is on a saxophone. They're playing the same music, but in different ways, using different instruments. So I think that this whole contract is an agreement on what music will play. Now that you know the score, you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
Is that a play on words you love or what?
I love it.
So we're all playing Mozart, but you're on the violin, you're on the cello, I'm on the timpani, and we're playing it the way we are playing it. And in that way, free will is memorialized. Free will is protected. Free will continues to be part of our experience. We freely choose to enter into particular interactions on the physical level as the way we have decided we're going to keep our agreement in terms of providing emotional content for each other to grow with.
Okay. I think that there is a potential wrinkle here when we talk about other players in the universal game joining us. And does that, can you help me understand what happens when another player in the game becomes involved in my life?
I think it's important for us to understand that everything that's ever happened is happening now and ever will happen has already occurred.
Right.
So when another person joins in the interaction in some way or another, they're also doing so, I'm not sure where the wrinkle is, because they're also doing so as an expression of their free will. That is, they have a choice to do that or not to do that. And by the way, both things have occurred. See, it's very important for us to understand what's going on here. Both, let's just say, your co-host's name again is?
Scott.
Scott. So let's just say that now Scott is sitting there and he's interacting with all of us. But it was also a moment when we did this interview when Scott was not here at all. In fact, you never even met Scott. He wasn't even part of your life. Both things have happened.
Right.
And so what I was told in conversation, I know this sounds like I'm making it up as I go along, but really, this is really important because I asked these same kinds of questions in my dialogue with God. And she said, Neale, it's really very simple. You think there's only one timeline, but there are 100 different timelines in which everything has occurred. And I said, I'm having a hard time conceptualizing it. I can hear the words, but I can't quite get that in my mind. And God said, okay, have you ever played chess with a computer? I said, sure, I played computer chess. God said, you do understand, of course, that all the moves have already been made. Every single move in the game has been made. So you play the game on Thursday, and you move, king's pawn to king's pawn 4 or whatever, and then the computer goes, makes its move, and you make your move, and it makes its move. How does it know what move to make? It's because you've already made that move. It's already happened. But on Friday, you play the same game and you make a different move. So you can play the computer chess game, and you have to understand that all the moves that are possible with all the players on the board at any given moment have already occurred. The game's been played already 1,000 times. That's how they programmed the game, because computer chess experts sat down and said, well, okay, but supposing you didn't move your knight there, suppose you moved it over here. And they took months programming the game so that no matter how you play it, the computer has an answer. I sat there, I played computer chess, Steve-O, whatever. I was play the game, and the computer would make its move, and I'd spend like 2.5, 3 minutes trying to figure out, let's see now, if I move the rook here. No, wait. I'll move. No, if I did that, he's going to do that. Oh, like you play chess. So I figured out all the moves. I thought, okay, I'll move over here. It took me 3.5 minutes to make that move. The computer sees the move, it goes, makes its move in 1/10 of a second. So, wait a minute, don't you have to even think about it? So, it's already happened. This this is not a new thing for me.
Right.
So the answer to your question, as I understand it, Steve-O, is that when a person comes into your life, they're also exercising free will. And there have been many lifetimes, many times through the time tunnel when that person did not come at that moment into your life.
I wasn't thinking as much of people. I was thinking, and in my reading of the book, I'll highlight certain things, and I was going through it, and there was it said players with a capital P in the universal game, and they'll come into your life, and I didn't interpret that as people, but like more, spiritual entities, I suppose.
I think that's a fair interpretation. My mind is telling me that also could be true.
Yeah.
That we are visited by spiritual entities, angels, your guardian angel, whatever you want to call it. And I by the way, I've had those experiences as well.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask that is because I feel somewhat strongly that there were times in my life where, for lack of a better way to describe it, I want to say there were times when I wasn't at the wheel. Like, I did something that makes no sense to me. Like, why did I do that? And I felt that it was important that this thing happened, but looking back on it, I just don't see. I don't understand why it happened. I don't understand why I did it, and I feel like I wasn't at the wheel. Maybe there was some other player in the universal game that kind of stepped in and somehow manipulated what happened for a desired outcome. Now, I reserve the right to be totally wrong about that, but I wanted to put that to you about, like, what are your thoughts about if there ever being a time when I wasn't at the wheel because another spiritual entity manipulated what happened with me?
I disagree with that particular description because that would also violate free will.
Right, that makes sense.
And so that another entity could not cause you to not be at the wheel.
Okay.
But here's what I do think happens in moments like that, because I've had those moments too. When it felt like I wasn't at the wheel, excuse me, and it felt like I wasn't at the wheel, not because I wasn't at the wheel, but because I didn't know that I was.
Right.
And I didn't know that I was because I was at the wheel, to use the metaphor, driving the vehicle of my life from a different level of consciousness. I'm aware that we're functioning in every moment of our life at the subconscious, at the conscious, at the superconscious, and at the supraconscious level. And when we're responding from the supraconscious level, or even the superconscious level, we also often do things that we are not consciously aware of why we're doing that. What would cause me to do that? Why would I, like you described, why would I do that? So I think that those moments are moments when we are functioning at the super or supraconscious level, at a level that our conscious mind is not aware of. But that does not mean that the totality of who we are,
right,
at all four levels, is not at the wheel. It just means that we're not aware that we are at the wheel.
Right.
It's kind of like, when you're sleeping and you're not aware that you're awake, but you are awake and you still think you're dreaming. Most of us have had that experience, only to realize, wait a minute, I didn't dream I didn't dream I heard that sound. I actually heard that sound. I'm not.
Right.
My God, you mean I've been awake all this while? And most of us have had that experience of realizing that we're awake, but not knowing that we were awake while we were awake until we awaken to the fact that we're awake.
it's important to know if you're awake. And it's also really nice to know how well you slept last night, how much time was spent in REM sleep. Let me see right here. I had 32.7% of my time asleep last night was in REM sleep. That might indicate my body is making up for not getting enough REM sleep recently. How do I know that? Because I wear a Whoop band. And if you listen to this podcast, then you know a lot of really awesome people wear Whoop bands. Why? Because it's the most sophisticated fitness tracking device known to man. Plus, now it tells you how oxygenated your blood is, if there's anything unusual about your skin temperature. I mean, dude, it knows, like, if I'm skateboarding like I did yesterday. It keeps track of all the calories I'm burning, how well I'm recovering. I love my Whoop band, and I love the Whoop app. And if you go to whoop.com, that's WHOOP.com, and use the promo code STEVO, you can get 10% off your membership. And I'm telling you, with the new Whoop 4.0 band and the waterproof charger, man, it's never been more awesome to wear a Whoop band. So jump on this deal. It's 10% off your first order, and it is at whoop.com with the promo code STEVO. Now let's get back to it. Yeah. I think potentially an equally valid interpretation of
You gotta love it, right?
Yeah.
You gotta love. I mean, you gotta love the mystery. You gotta love the mystery. Excuse me, but
Oh no, it's great.
I mean,
So are highly evolved beings operating at the supra-conscious level, or is it just a different ballgame at that?
I think both are true. I'm not suggesting that highly evolved beings are interfering. See, highly evolved beings would never interfere with our life. That's another reason why they couldn't do
Right.
what you're suggesting, Steve-O. Because a highly evolved being would never want to have anything to do with your life that would control the moment for you
Right.
and take your hands off the wheel. That would violate the ethics of a highly evolved being that said, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
I'll give him advice. I'll maybe give him a little, but I'm not going to take the wheel from him, and then make him think that he lost control of the car. So highly evolved beings would never do such a thing, in my understanding.
Right. I think that's very fair to say, and I think an equally valid interpretation would be that when I thought, like, what I thought might have been another player stepping in and manipulating my experience was actually me, right? Like, that other player was me.
Bingo.
You know? So
That's what I've been trying to say, except you put it in 10 seconds words. 10 words, and I put it into 150 words. Darn it.
At least.
it was something that you just said too about that would violate the ethics, and I think it wouldn't just violate the ethics of highly evolved beings, but it would violate the immutable laws of the universe.
Well, of course, Star Trek.
Yeah.
And what was the prime directive?
I can't.
Well, the prime directive was, you were not to interfere in any way in the cultural or sociological or spiritual development of another civilization, even though you would see it was for their own good, not to interfere.
Right.
That's the whole point of the prime directive.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period of my life where I was experiencing what's called psychosis, because I was ingesting just all of these substances. I would be awake for days on end, doing cocaine and inhaling with inhalants and all these combinations of sleep deprivation and acute intoxication from the substances would bring about psychosis. And my take on that, still to this day, approaching 15 years of chemical sobriety, is that...
Nice going, by the way.
Thank you. I genuinely believe that by ingesting all of those substances, I managed to erode barriers between maybe other dimensions, other situations. I hold in my belief that all of the experiences that I had with hearing voices, with having tactile hallucinations, all of these experiences that I had were very, very real, and that by eroding the barriers of different compartments of the game, that I let in, I consider it frequencies, but I let in, other energies, other frequencies, high frequencies, low frequencies. So I opened myself up to pretty dangerous stuff, like high frequencies being angels, low frequencies being demons. And I had some experiences really scary and some really wonderful, and I view it as a really crude approach to spiritual experience. And in these hallucinations, hearing the voices, there was I called it the committee, and I would be kind of communicating with this committee of, and I remember the committee being very, very clear on that rule, that their hands are off. They're not going to interfere with anything. But I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, on psychosis, and because at the time I just wanted to keep in piling more substance, and to keep these things happening. I had some really wild experiences, and
that's the danger of it. The danger of it is that it becomes attractive enough at that level for us to want to continue. Now, I really can't answer your question directly, what do I think of it, because I've never had an experience even close to that. So I don't really have an opinion, and I didn't ask in my conversations with God questions around that. Mm-hmm. So I've tried real hard in my life not to opine.
Okay.
By the way, if you think it's easy to work that word into a sentence, try it sometime. You can go years without being...
I've heard it done once in my life.
Yeah.
This is the second.
So I try to not offer opinions on things of which I have no experience, no background, no understanding, and I did not ask in my conversations with God. But when I heard you talking about it just now, my mind was going, I hope that there's not going to be too attractive a picture painted here that would cause a person to say, well, hell, I could see that as a good rationale, a good reason to ingest some things that maybe not be good for me to ingest or to imbibe or to... So we could maybe send the wrong...
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, and there is a wealth of evidence, video evidence. Like where I was not an attractive place. I can assure that my life was an absolute disaster, and I was a very unlovely creature. I became at that time capable of being very nasty. I think it's a spiritual law that the way we treat others is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. And at that time in my life, my self-esteem, my self-worth, everything about me was degraded to a point that the way I treated others, I had tendencies to want to harm people's reputations, hurt their feelings. And all of that behavior during that time brought about a level of guilt and shame and humiliation, which ultimately would become the greatest motivation for me to dedicate myself to a life of recovery, to not be that way again. So I love that you were sensitive to the idea that we might be that I might be glorifying these spiritual experiences when in fact they were
inadvertently, of course,
Yeah,
but that someone else could hear that and say, that
Sounds fun.
right.
sounds like at least interesting. You should give it a try.
Yeah, I don't recommend inviting demons into your life. That's really what it was.
Can I just wrap my head around some things, and maybe you can help me if I'm saying this right and have an understanding. All things are energy, right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
So,
Consciousness.
well, plants, trees, people, we all vibrate at a certain frequency. People vibrate within a frequency, a spectrum. The lower the vibration, I heard Wayne Dyer talk about this, but I'm not sure how accurate and how to even test how fast the frequency levels are. But he's something along the lines of, from 8,000 to 25,000 is like, the average human population, or whatever speed that frequency is. Then you start getting into the realm of like, 30,000 to 50,000, and disease doesn't really exist at that frequency. And then you get, 60 to 80 is, Gandhi, Buddha, Mother Teresa, where now you walk like, at a lower frequency, but at a higher level, like you walk into a party and there's just something about that person in the room. And you're like, man, you're kind of attracted to that person. Then as you get higher in the frequency, like Mother Teresa, or people come from villages to go flock to see this person. Like the attraction is there and everybody wants to go see this person. And then as you get to like, the highest frequency is like Jesus Christ, or, the Mahavatars of the world. Am I spot on to think that, or am I off in some sense?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I didn't ask that question. But I think that my mind feels that there's some truth. I'm not sure that the description is wholly, completely, and 1,000% accurate, but I think it's close to what could be true. I don't think there's any doubt that people are, and that every living thing, as you mentioned, every living thing is vibrating at a different frequency. And I don't think there's any doubt as well that the higher the frequency is at which they're vibrating, the more they tend to display, demonstrate, express what those high frequencies have made clear to them, what they've come to understand about who they are and why they're here. And I don't think there's any doubt at all that those high frequencies tend to be magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
That we do, in fact, tend to be attracted to people like that. I knew a man like that, by the way, at a personal level, that I appeared with at several events in the past 20 years. We didn't co-present, but he was appearing at the same event I was appearing at. His name was Thich Nhat Hanh,
mm-hmm.
and he was a Buddhist monk. He's since celebrated his continuation day. But I was at several events with Thich Nhat Hanh, and I promise you that, and we had speakers, we always had speakers' dinners or speakers' receptions where the general public was not there, just the presenters were there.
Mm-hmm.
So there were only maybe 10 or 12, 15 of us, as opposed to 1,500. I'm in the room with, like 10, 12, 15 other people, and Thich Nhat Hanh walks into the room. I promise you that without even looking at the doorway, maybe talking to somebody else, everybody in that room knew that something incredible had just happened.
Mm-hmm.
That he walked in the room. He didn't say a word when he first walked in. We all knew that he was there. It was his energetic impacted and affected the entire room because of the frequency that he was bringing with him, that he was projecting.
I wonder, when you describe people coming from other villages, and the more, the higher the level of the frequency, the more the magnetism, I can't help but react to that, thinking that there's some pretty low vibrating people attract, it's It seems that negativity almost attracts more. Like if you look at the media.
I like what you're saying. That's very good insight. When Scott was talking about the higher frequency, I didn't hear him say the better. I heard him only say the higher.
Right, the higher well, those lower frequency people that come to the the lower frequency goes to the higher, and then they're leaving there on a different frequency themselves. I think it's.
But I think the point that Steve was making, and I'm going to agree with him, is that even so-called negative frequencies, or what we're kind of like intuitively wanting to call lower frequencies, but what we really mean are more negative. For instance, one of the highest frequencies that one can project into the universe is fear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And no one would suggest that fear is a positive frequency. We would call it a negative emotion.
Yeah.
So likewise, there are people who project so-called, by our definition, by our current human definition, so-called negative energetics, but those energetics are vibrating very quickly. They're very powerful. Fear is one of the most powerful energetics that you could embrace, and when you project fear into the universe, you attract what Conversations with God told me that. Neale, you will attract what you fear.
Wow, that's pretty heavy. You attract what you fear? It's a good thing I don't fear a bad diet, because I got AG1 from Athletic Greens, baby. The most delicious, comprehensive, convenient daily nutrition there is. It plugs in every gap in my diet. I'm telling you, because it's loaded with 75 different vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens. I'm telling you, they load so much good stuff into this. I don't have to be afraid of anything about my diet. Plus, it's great for my gut health. It's great for my cognitive ability. I mean, dude, it's called Athletic Greens for a reason. And AG1 is the supplement of all supplements with everything you need. It is comprehensive and convenient. And if you go to athleticgreens.com/Stevo, they will give you 5 travel packs plus an entire year's supply of immune-boosting vitamin D with your first order. You can't beat it. Go to athleticgreens.com/Stevo, and let's get back to it.
Not because your frequency is so low, but because it's so powerful. That fear and love are almost equally powerful in terms of the energetic that's sent into the universe. Of course, fear is nothing more than an expression of love. That is, if you didn't love anything, you'd fear nothing. If I didn't love my life, I wouldn't fear losing it. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't fear losing you. If I didn't love money, I wouldn't fear not having enough. So fear is always an expression of something that you love. It's simply the other side of the coin. It's just the inverse expression, but it's this. So it carries the same power, the same energetic, the same frequency, which is the point you made, and I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
Once again, Steve is wrong and you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're
it's
Steve.
always that
Scott's
way.
wrong.
Right. It's always that. No. That when the law of attraction phase came out, in the early 2000s, and everybody there was that book that movie that came out.
Yeah.
Maybe What the Bleeper. I don't remember. The Secret. And
which I was in, by the way.
Yeah. And the one thing that some people were talking about that got it wrong. Law of attraction is there, but what they didn't touch upon was the law of resonance. That what you put out will come back to you equally. So when you're like, okay, I don't have any money. Like, okay, law of attraction, like I want money. Like, where's my money? It's going to come back to you at the same way. Whereas if you had gratitude, like I already have all the money I need. And then all of a sudden that kind of starts showing up back in your life in that sense.
You know how I've conceived of that in my world? I agree with everything you've just said, Scott. And how I was told that, what I was told in my life by God. God said, I only have one word in my vocabulary. I know you think that I'm really verbose, that I have a lot of things to say, but the truth is, I have only one word in my vocabulary.
Be love.
Yes.
Oh.
Right.
So if you say, I want more money in my life, God says, yes, that's true, you do. I'm tired of living alone. I want my perfect partner in my life. Yes, you do. Yeah, I'm afraid I might lose all that I've gained in my work so hard. I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. God said, yes, you do. But if you say, all the money I need is coming to me now, God equally says, yes, that's true. So what I've learned is that when I get that God says yes, there's only one word in God's vocabulary. Whatever I say, whatever I think, God says, yep, I agree with you. You know why I agree with you? Because you are me. Because I've invested in you all the power to create your reality that I have invested in myself. That you are, in fact, a living demonstration, an individuation of me. So, of course, I'm going to say yes to whatever you say, because, my friend, your wish is my command.
The game-changing quote in your book that changed my life about money was when you were writing the God, and he responded with, you're unhappy with your money situation because you're unhappy with your money situation. And that was like, oh my God, that summed up everything for me.
When The Secret wouldn't, I read the Law of Attraction book when I was in early recovery. I was still in rehab. And I wonder if you've heard of this. I had a very, very scary reaction to it. I thought, so what I think will become my reality. And then it occurred to me, well, they say if you tell yourself, don't think of a pink elephant, then all of a sudden, all you can think of is a pink elephant. So by the rules of the law of attraction, what if I tell myself, don't think my greatest fears, because then they'll become a reality. That's what it is. The what you think becomes your reality. Oh no, now I'm telling myself, don't think about my biggest fears, because then that one, and then, oh no, now all I can think about is my greatest fears. So now my greatest fears are going to become my reality.
I became in the Hall of Mirrors.
Yeah.
Don't think about cancer in your left leg.
That was what started my journey to the psych ward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the Hall of Mirrors here. That's a very interesting and wonderfully incisive description of, in fact, some of the challenges we're all facing here. It's like, going into the fun house at the carnival and all the mirrors are warped and, and you're in the Hall of Mirrors. Mm-hmm. What you're sending out is reflected back to you. What you're sending out is reflected back to you. And if you don't want to send it out, it's reflected back to you. That kind of a thing. Until you finally wake up one day and say, no, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I can even decline that effect. The whole thing is an illusion. Wow. The whole thing is an illusion. I'm living in the 10 illusions of humans. The whole thing is made up. I can even describe that effect as beautifully as Steve-O, as you just did now, and I can say, no, I don't have to even find myself seduced by that impact. I can just say, I'm above all of that.
What I did that I found most helpful was to go back to the notion that the way we treat others is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. I could buy onto that because I saw that was my experience. And I decided that the best way to change how I feel about myself, it would be to flip that. So the same rule would apply, that if I can change the way that I treat others, the effect will be I'll be changing the way I feel about myself.
There was a guy who made that point a few years ago. He put it in a somewhat different way, but it was the exact same point. He said, do unto others as you would have it done unto you.
It's the golden rule.
He made the point. Exactly the point you just made.
Sort of, yeah.
Not sort of, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I
do unto others as you would have it done unto you. How much more clear could it be? You're exactly right. And by the way, I just admire that you came to that awareness. Oh, wow. how I treat others is a reflection of how I feel about myself. And I can change how I feel about myself by treating others the way I want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. That's world-changing, Steve-O. It's life-changing and world-changing. Supposing that everybody on the planet got that piece of information tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, everything would change.
It's more about seizing upon the opportunity to feel like a guy who treats people well. You know, like I was talking to a friend who's having relationship issues, and I said, you know, that with my fiance, I have something I don't always do it well, but when I do it, I benefit from it a lot. Which is to view every situation I find myself in my relationship as an opportunity for me to express myself as the person who I aspire to be. And it's a little way of taking something that, you know, maybe it's a pain in the butt, but if it's an opportunity for me to be a great guy, then yeah, I'll go to the vet at 2 a.m. because you think the dog might have eaten chocolate. Well, it probably didn't. It's going to be fine anyway, but let's go.
That's a relationship-changing insight. I hope that all of the many, many, many people who view your programs, Steve-O, hear you. That's a relationship-changing insight.
That's the best thing I've ever done for my relationship is selfishly use it to feel good about being a good guy.
And to realize that even when the person across the room is not behaving or responding or demonstrating an aspect of themselves that you'd like them to demonstrate, even when they're being, you know, cruel or short or snippy or whatever, or unreasonable, 2 o'clock in the morning, the dog didn't have chocolate. I'm not going. You know, even when they're being unreasonable, that we can say, oh, I see the gift here. I see the gift. That's the title of your next book. No, really. That's the title of your next book. I See the Gift by Steve-O.
All right.
That's cool. Yeah, and the truth is, it was probably Steve's Reese's Pieces wrapper, and he blamed it on the dog. So he just went to the vet because he was like, you know what?
He's just barking up the wrong tree.
Can I ask you a question about the Conversations with God movie and how accurate that was? There was a scene there that I was interested in. You were homeless. You started you were sleeping on the couch. You started having the dialogue with God. And you hadn't had any money for a while, and then there was a part, I believe, that at the airport, you're at the diner at the cafe, and they made you an offer for $4 million for the transcripts, and in the show, the lady turned it down, and you were like, "What are you doing?" It was that a real situation that happened?
Yes.
And what were you thinking?
It wasn't the lady that turned it down. I was here. The guy turned it down. It was the lady who made the offer.
Yes. Sorry.
She didn't turn it down. She was, in fact, the president of a major publishing company. And my then publisher, she was wanting to buy the book from him and future books. And he turned it down. And I started to check. I said, well, but this is as far as I got, because he's under the table. He stepped on my foot. He slammed his foot, his shoe on the top of my foot, like, shut up. I'll handle this. But it wasn't. My memory of it wasn't $4 million. It was $1 million. And then he or maybe it was, who knows? But I think that she offered $1 million. He looked at her and he said, I can do that myself. I don't need you. We can do that on our own. My publishing company, the small publishing company that first put the book out. Then she came back with an offer of 1.5. Is my memory of it.
Okay.
She came back with an offer at one point, which in those days was worth about, in today's money, more. But in any event, she came back with 50% more, and then I wouldn't let him turn it down. I just said, but I asked her. I said, why do you want to? Why would you make an offer like that? What? Tell me what you see in this. And she said, I'll never forget her words, by the way. She said, because I think your book could change the world.
Is it true that Conversations with God, Book 1...
Can you hold that question?
Yeah, of course.
Because we didn't get to your... Did you have a question behind that? Other than,
well, yeah, I mean, it's like, assuming living in a tent in Oregon and you have $0 in your bank account, I mean, what are you sitting there thinking when somebody offers you $1 million and the guy turns it down? I mean, what's the fear there is like, oh, it's never happening. Like, what were you thinking when they turned it down? Like, were you like, oh my God, what did they just do? I just made a mistake, or?
Yeah, I started to say, but he stepped on my foot.
Yeah.
So he didn't step on my foot. He slammed his shoe on my foot, like, shut the hell up. I'll handle this. The unspoken message. So yeah, but I did think at first, the guy's crazy. Why would he turn that down? And because I knew I would benefit, obviously, as well. But so yeah, I was pretty taken aback.
Before that, when you had no money, and there was probably some resentment towards God about I'm broke, I'm this, and then you wrote it on the couch, and you heard the quotes. You'll be happy with your money situation when you're finally happy with your money situation. From that, did your thought on money change?
My thought on everything changed.
And it was more of a gratitude. And then from that time, when everything changed to where you got that offer, like you were practicing the gratitude of money's coming my way, or,
Yes, but that didn't stop me from, you mentioned about a half hour ago, you're in it and then you're out of it, then you're in it, then you're out of it. And that was one of those moments, I was living really in the messages. I truly was. I felt like I was pretty much in that bubble, in that cocoon. I had received the messages, and I was practicing them, and I was getting it, and I was, and then this lady offers $1 million, and he turns it down, and I popped out of that bubble like that. Well, wait a minute, this transcends my current understanding. Mm-hmm. So I did, and that's still my experience. That's still my experience, that certain things happen, certain things occur, and I burst out of the place that I'm in. I burst out of the bubble, if you please. I find myself knowing what I know, but not being able to express or experience it in that moment. Now, I'll give myself this much, and without breaking my arm, patting myself on the back, I do it less now than I did before. So I've reduced the number of moments like that. But I still have times when I think, like you talked about, who is that masked man? Who's that guy who just did that, who just said that, or just responded in that way? When you know better. So I don't think, I was almost tempted to say, I don't think the game ever ends. But I think that it does. I'm going to withdraw that thought, because I have met people like Thich Nhat Hanh or Byron Katie and other people I've met in my life who have reached a level where they don't fall out. They don't fall out of the space. They don't reject what they already know. They don't abandon themselves. Mm-hmm. But I abandon myself less now than I did 25 years ago. I'll give myself that, as I said.
Yeah.
But I'm not really still where I want to be, and I'd like to get to there. I'd like to get closer and closer and closer before I check out of here. I'm going to be 80 next year.
Wow.
I'd like to, that was your cue to say you don't even look close to 80.
Oh, yeah, look close to 80.
That's what I meant by wow.
Do you still meditate every day, except on days that you don't?
No, I never did meditate every day.
I do.
I don't. But that explains why you're so far more advanced.
Oh, I don't know about that.
He's glowing over there.
I don't know about that.
But let me retract that. I said, I don't meditate every day the way people describe meditation, because they think it has to look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But I write every day. Every day of my life, I'm writing something into the message and around the message and around my life and so forth. So my form of meditation really is to write. And I write hours, not a few minutes here and there. From 7:30 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, I'm at my keyboard, either answering questions from readers or writing another article that's been asked of me for a magazine, or writing for my website. I have a column called Ask Neale, where people,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm constantly, so that's my form of meditation. People can meditate doing the dishes.
Right.
People can meditate walking down the street. And I talk about 7 methods of meditation. So when I say I don't meditate every day, I mean not the way people think you're supposed to meditate. But I meditate in my way, and I sometimes meditate while I'm washing the dishes. And I experience the glass in my hand, and the soap bubbles on that glass and the water dripping down in a way that I never did before. I see it sometimes for the first time. So meditation doesn't mean a particular action. It's a particular mental function that allows you to focus in a totally different way on what's going on in your life, including focusing on nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question. And then I wanted to get you to... Okay, quick question. Do you still hold the world record for being on the New York Times bestseller list longer than any other book with Conversations with God, Book 1?
I don't know.
I understand it was almost 3 years. Like, I believe it was 131 weeks.
137 weeks, I think.
137 weeks.
I don't know. By the way, that's not any... nonfiction. We need to say nonfiction.
Oh, gotcha.
Because fiction books have been on the bestseller list for 5, 8, 10 years, a long time. But nonfiction books typically do not remain on the bestseller list for that long.
Got it.
But I don't know. I don't track that.
I love it because I think that when I describe Conversations with God, I say that it's this book that fundamentally changed the way I view life and the universe. That it's a dialogue. I described that you were at a place in your life you felt frustrated, and that you had been in the habit of writing letters, which you wouldn't necessarily send, but it was an exercise in venting. That you would write a letter to someone and maybe just file it away. But you were at such a point of despair.
My father taught me that, by the way.
Yeah, it's a good practice.
When I was angry, he'd say, write a letter and put it on the mantelpiece. Look at it tomorrow, and if you still feel tomorrow after you read it you want to send it, then send it.
Yeah, the 24-hour rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so at this certain point you were experiencing such despair, you decided, I'm going to write a letter to God. And, why is my life such a struggle? Why is it, everything like that? And that you intuitively received a response, which was, are you really looking for answers to these questions, or are you just venting? And, it's for a lot of people, it's a difficult pill to swallow that you're able to write both sides of the dialogue, yours and God's. And to the extent that that's a difficult pill for some people to swallow, we look at how long it was on the New York Times bestseller list, which adds some credibility, lends some weight to it, And for me, I say it's not necessarily for everybody, but for me, it is absolutely to me, it's the most important thing. What I'm interested in, because I don't think it's been made clear. Can you describe how the intuitive responses come? I think there was some suggestion that you felt your hand moving, or was there?
I don't want to make the case for automatic writing. I did feel my hand moving, but not in the sense that people think of automatic writing. Mm-hmm. Someone else is kind of like taking over your body and is writing. More in the sense of, if you've ever owed your mom a letter and you start writing, and your hand is moving without you really thinking seriously about, dear Mom, I'm really sorry, I've let it go this far. Please forgive me. I've been very busy. And you find your hand moving without you really consciously thinking of what I want to write. And then after you get all that out of the way, then you start actually writing. The truth is, why I'm sending you this note is,
right.
I need $200. Can you help me out? Or whatever the real reason is. So in that sense, but not in the sense of automatic writing. Yeah, how it occurred to me, how it felt to me was, I heard a voice, and it was when I very first heard it, in the very first moment, I would have sworn someone was in the room with me. And I whipped around, and there was nobody behind me. I heard a voice that felt like it was over my right shoulder. And of course, there was no one there, and I thought, terrific. Not only am I furious, not only am I angry with life, angry with God, now I'm going out of my mind. I'm hearing voices. You know all about that. So then I thought, terrific. But then I dismissed the idea that I'm actually hearing voices out loud. But then I began to just receive thoughts, just heard ideas, words in my head, in response to what I was writing. Do you really want answers to all these questions, or are you just venting? I remember writing furiously in answer to what I was being asked. Yeah, I am venting. If you've got answers, I'd sure as hell like to know what they are.
Yeah.
And the response I got immediately was, wouldn't you rather be sure as heaven? I said, what's that supposed to mean? And I realized I was caught up in the two-way. I didn't even try to describe it. I just went with it. And before I knew it, I was involved in a question-answer process that I never stopped to ask myself about. What's going on here? Why is this happening? What is it? I just let myself. And then I began receiving thoughts that never occurred to me before, or that violated every thought I ever did hold.
Wow.
Like there's no such thing as right and wrong. Or there are no victims and no villains in the world. Or there's no such thing as the Ten Commandments. That was the one that stopped me. I remember dropping the pen when I was given, there's no such thing as the Ten Commandments. I literally dropped the pen like it was red hot. I thought, what is this? What's going on here?
But what did you describe as? It's not 10 Commandments. It's 10 suggestions, or?
Yeah, it's not 10 Commandments. It's 10 commitments.
Okay.
10 commitments. And what she said was, you will know, because I asked the question when Moses came down from the mountaintop. He said he had been given this tablet with 10 commandments, and he's talking to his people about how they should then behave. And what I was told was, no. God didn't say these are commandments. These are things you must do or else.
Right.
But you've asked, how can I tell my people that they will know that they're on the path? And you'll know what you'll know you're on the path. I'll make this commitment to you. You will know you're on the path, because when you're on the path, you shall not use the name of God in vain. You won't lie. You shall not lie. You won't lie. You won't commit adultery. You won't do these things, because when you're on the path, you simply won't do those things. Mm-hmm. And Moses heard it as, you won't do those things, meaning you better not. And so he kind of flipped it around.
Right.
And so, but I rewrote the 10 Commandments as the 10 commitments as I was given in the dialogue. Steve-O, I got a letter about a year after that, I guess, after the book came out, from a minister, a Christian minister in New Hampshire, I think. And he said, "Dear Mr. Walsch, I can't tell. I lead a congregation, the first church, and he said, I can't say that I agree with your theology, but I will say this much. You have opened the discussion about God in a way that few people have done in my lifetime. And my congregation is talking about nothing else but what you said. So you have broken down the barrier of the peace, because in most churches you can't even talk about this stuff. You can't question it.
Right.
Not a lot. And of course there are countries where if you question it, they put you to death.
Yeah.
They sentence you to death because you're not supposed to question what the Scripture says, what you've been taught. So I thought, well, if the worst that I've done is open the subject for re-exploration, fair enough. Fair enough. And I want to make something really clear, Steve, if I can, since you've been kind enough to give me the floor here. I need people to understand that I know I didn't write this book. The wisdom, the insights, the statements, the truths that are offered in all 9 of the Conversations with God dialogue books are not mine and did not come from me. I simply took dictation. I simply wrote down what I was hearing, questioned it like anybody would, like you would, like anybody else would, questioned it like, how can that be true? Well, wait a minute, what about this? Yeah, but. I had bunches of yeah, buts. Yeah, but. So all I did was add my yeah, buts. And then I carefully took down what I was given, and I just took dictation. And I sent it to the publisher. I will say this to the various publishers. Nobody has ever edited my books. I've been asked that. What do the editors do when they get your books? None of the publishers who have published my books could find an editor on the workroom floor. Who wants to edit God? So nobody. So the books have been published exactly the way they came off the pen for the first 3, and off the keyboard for the other books. Nobody has ever changed a single word in those books. So, for what it's worth, I took dictation and they published it, and the rest, as they say, is history.
I love it. I would say we should end there, but I wanted to. There was one thing, and I believe it was in book 2, and I loved it so much. It was a point about there being no such thing as time. And in the dialogue, God said, look at how ridiculous, and I'm paraphrasing, but look at how ridiculous your attempt at creating a construct of time is. In order to make it work, you guys are trying so hard to make this work that you've got to not include a day every 4 years to make it work. You're trying to just squeeze, you got your leap year, and then like with the meteor time, like this is just, there's this infinitesimal fraction of a second that just doesn't quite fit. So every so often you gotta not have a second. Like do you not see how ridiculous this construct of time is? It's a
making it all up.
Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, and all you have to do to realize that there really is no such thing as time is live till you're 80. The closer I get to my 80th birthday, which is now just a year away or so, less than a year away, the more I realize. I woke up actually this very morning thinking about when I was 24 and when I was 14 and when I was 29 and 36, and it really does feel like yesterday. So. Yeah, I'm clear that time does not exist in the way that we think that it does. There's only one moment, and that's right here, right now.
I wonder what you think of this with regards to time. Many years ago, probably about 20 years ago, I was sitting there and I thought, it used to be a commonly held belief that the world was flat, that actually the sailors were afraid to ride their ships too far because they thought they would fall off the end of the earth. And we've evolved enough in our science and our understanding that's become an absurd thought, because you can't fall off of the end of the earth because the earth is round. And then I asked my question, when I wonder when we may have evolved enough to find it equally absurd that we can fall off the end of time. You know, we have this idea of time as a linear thing with a beginning and an end. But if much the same as the earth is round, we can't fall off the end of the earth, it would follow that time is round. There's no beginning or end. You don't fall off. Time is round, dude.
Yeah, which is said in conversations with God. God said, take that. I remember she gave me an illustration. You think time is a straight line that goes, it starts here and it ends here, whatever that is, the end of the world or whatever you think. But God said, no, grab that line, and marry it, and you'll see that everything is a circle.
Yeah.
And he said to me, not just time, but everything. Everything is a circle.
Not only is it a circle, everything is a circle, which is actually traveling in a circle, around a circle.
Bingo.
And I also thought it was really fascinating that in book 1, you asked about, is there any limit to how small something can get or how big something can get? And the answer from God was that you can cut something in half. You'll have 2 equal pieces. And then you can take those pieces, you can cut them in half. And there is no point, like literally for infinity, you can always cut something in half. There's no end to how small something can get. And and it goes the other way as well. So conceivably, in the space of an atom is all of the information, the history, the future, the possible outcomes can fit like it in an atom. The smallest particle that we can fathom.
Yeah, smaller than an atom.
Would be an atom. Yeah, I don't know whether we're aware of anything smaller.
Subatomic particles. There are subatomic particles.
So within a subatomic particle, we can fit the entire universe.
Yeah, and what she said to me was, if you go to outer space and look at the universe, you will see nothing different from if you could stand far enough away from your body and look at the particles of your body, or the particles inside the particles of your body. It's all the same construction. So, but the question. These are fascinating observations that we've all become aware of at some level or another. But the real question is, so what does that have to do with life? For instance, if everything's a circle, there's Neale sitting there, and Steve and Neale are agreeing everything is a circle. But if I'm watching this podcast, I got to go, fascinating, but so what? What does it have to do with me at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon? I said, talk to me about stuff that matters to me and produces functionality in my life. And that's what we'll be doing on our second interview, because we're going way over time here.
Yeah.
But if we had another hour and a half, we could take a look at, what is the functionality? Because if the messages from God, or messages that we're receiving from the cosmos, from the universe, from the higher evolved beings or whatever, or from the place of wisdom that dwells within all of us, have no functional applicability, then it becomes a big so what.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested. A theology that has no applicability is bankrupt. And I'm not interested in being spiritually bankrupt. So what I've tried to do in the books I've written, that I actually have written, as opposed to the books that I took dictation for, what I've tried to do in the books that I've written following the dialogue is to articulate the applicability of these principles that were given to us in the Conversations with God dialogues. How does that apply in relationship, in the world of business, in the world of work, with regard to money, with regard to health, with regard to, how does that all apply? And there's way too much there for us to get into here, but I can tell you that nothing that we are given in those words of wisdom that I took dictation on is not applicable in a functional, practical way in everyday life, including the idea that it's all a circle.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love you, Neale. Thank you for...
Let me tell you something I admire about you before you say goodbye to me. I really admire the fact that you're so honest. You're visible. You're transparent. You don't try to hide behind anything. You're just completely honest and transparent. And it's hard to find people who are willing to go there and do it fearlessly. Not just go there, but go there fearlessly. So when you do that, you're a demonstration to all who watch your podcast. You're a wonderful demonstration and a wonderful model. And that's something that I admire about you. I've seen your podcasts. It's nice to be on it, but I've actually watched some clips of your podcast. And I think, wow, this guy's in the moment, totally present. And he is transparent. He's hiding nothing. He's being totally visible. That takes a level of courage, to say nothing about the courage it took you to overcome your addictions. So you know what, pal? Nice going.
Hey, thank you so much, Neale. You're my favorite. You're my favorite teacher. You're my favorite author. You're my favorite thinker, and this meant the world to me.
The check's in the mail.
Did I tell you or what? That was just a big deal, man. And thank you guys for sticking around. Candidly, I'm guessing this isn't going to be the biggest performer of an episode, but it was just important to me. And for you guys making it to the end of this one, man, that's more special to me than ever. So thank you, especially for this one. And what else can I tell you? We're in Australia. It's been challenging, frankly. The tour bus that we rented, when it rains outside, it rains inside because there's just hella holes in the roof. But that stopped mattering when the bus totally broke down. And we were on the side of the highway, so I quite literally hitchhiked to the show that night. I mean, I got on the road hitchhiking, like 10 minutes. We had like 8 different cars and trucks pulled over, like trying to get photos and stuff. So hitchhiking's actually pretty easy for me in Australia. But yeah, dude, the bus broke down, so we took a 6-hour cab ride to the show the day after that. Now I'm in this traveling sauna of an RV. The air conditioning doesn't work. Woo! Man, nothing I won't do to get to my shows, baby. And thank you, Australia, for making them such a hit. With that, thank you again. I love you all.